It's the penultimate session of this week, and so far we've heard a lot about the impact of LEAF Marque, what we've been delivering and why that's important in the wider context of the industry. But today has a slightly different approach, and we're looking inwards. We're thinking about LEAF's next chapter, and I can't think of any better way than to discuss that and to do that by talking to the people who are really driving forward that change. So we have with me Caroline Drummond, CEO, Jenny Clark, Assurance Manager, and Clare Mike, who is the Director of Business Development. And I really feel so privileged to work with three such inspirational women who are absolute powerhouses, both in terms of ideas, energy, and inspiration. And it feels very apt in this week that we're not only celebrating our partnerships with experts in the industry, there's some really great speakers of examples of farmers, industry and stakeholders. But this week, I think it's also important that we celebrate staff and the women in particular on this session that are really driving forward and delivering the LEAF Marque system and LEAF in general. And before delving into more detail about looking forward and the future direction, I'd also like just to spend some time thinking about the journey up to this point. So I'll be asking Caroline, Jenny and Clare about their experiences on what they think and their insight on sustainability to help us understand how that's directed, thinking about sustainability in the future and the direction of LEAF. So I just want to start firstly off with that reflection side. And I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, just for the benefit of people who are perhaps not as familiar with you as most of us here. So if you could introduce yourself, your history at LEAF, and if you could also share your proudest moment or perhaps your biggest achievement. So if we could start with Caroline, please.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Well, gosh, also very inspired by all you do, Lucy, as well. So thank you. Well, my journey, as everybody probably knows, I'm the CEO at LEAF. It's quite a long journey. In fact, I handed in my notice from the job I was in on the 1st of April, 1991 to start work at LEAF on the 1st of June, 1991. I was a lecturer at Shuttleworth College, and my first day was the concept and an idea, a brilliant board chaired by the wonderful David Richardson, and a table and a pencil, and also a stationery book. So it was quite a day, and I went, probably in my second week, I went over to Germany, which was one of our partner projects, to look at what they were doing and then sort of build up what is now a fantastic organisation. And I guess my history has been long, and within that, and people like Justine Hards. Justine started in September, and again working sort of hand in hand over that time. But what that journey has always been about is around sustainability and making it happen. And I think if I think back of what are the proudest moments, I guess every day I have that wonderful opportunity of feeling proud, because I'm not just proud of what we've achieved, I'm really proud of the team that we have at the LEAF office. Really inspirational, really smart people, so committed. I'm really proud of the board, those that have worked with us in the past and those that work with us now. I am so proud of the farmers, because they're just brilliant. They're so enthusiastic and they're great to work with, and they're delivering. And of course, I'm proud of our members. At the end of the day, this is high caliber, and things work best by people working together. And that is, the partnership that I think the framing of LEAF and obviously integrated farm management has created. And LEAF Marque in particular, that we're celebrating today, puts that rubber stamp of capability of all those proud moments. So thank you, Lucy.
That was great. And I think we'll all agree from that was such a positive approach. And I think that'll be a reoccurring theme throughout the conversation today. And I don't think you could be any more accurate than saying getting things done. I think that is perhaps quite an understatement, because it's above and beyond everything from my experience of this. Thank you. Jenny, perhaps if you could share your history and achievement.
Oh, my journey is quite short compared to Caroline. So this marks my 5-year anniversary at LEAF, actually. This is, 5 years ago I joined LEAF, and then I've been assurance manager, which is my current job, for the last year and a half or just over. So yeah, I mean, my history before that was I studied zoology at university, and there was balancing, you know, like your ecology and biodiversity modules with my more applied animal science farming modules. And I wanted to kind of see whether I could bring the two together, particularly after doing my very research heavy masters. Felt actually wanted to come out into industry and make some real impact. So yeah, the job at LEAF was a real perfect fit for those perspectives. And yeah, I got a bit of experience working on a dairy farm and working a crop control agency as well, but really LEAF's my first full-time permanent job, and I've clung on in there and worked my way up. And I think, yeah, I mean, getting this job of assurance manager was a real, a proud moment for me to be given the opportunity to see where I could really shape and move the LEAF Marque going forwards.
Thank you. And just, it's always interesting to think of who comes from a farming background and who doesn't. So two contrasting examples. And was there a light bulb moment for you? Was there any point where kind of farming became an opportunity in terms of career? Because I think it is a good example that the farming industry has a lot of careers that aren't just, you know, what people perhaps associate with that.
I think it was the modules at uni. I've always been fascinated with animals and particularly like the anatomy. And when we did particularly digestive systems, you learn about that through whether it's ruminants or monogastrics, and they're like, that really clicked with me. And actually it made me realise that although not from a farming background, I'm sort of one generation removed from farming. So we used to holiday in the British countryside. We used to go walking quite a lot. So actually I had that background in without realising that I had that awareness of farming. It was actually always there. And then the two kind of came together. And yeah, I just think then I just followed my interest and not looked back.
It's quite nice because that's almost full circle of the work that LEAF does in terms of engaging with people and getting them on those experiences of farming who perhaps aren't from a farming background, and to see almost, yeah, full circle that influence it had on you, and now look at where you are now. Yeah. Great. Okay, Claire, if we could perhaps share your introduction and history and experiences.
Well, mine's really unorthodox compared to both of those two, really. So I left school and I trained to be a chef. So I'm a qualified chef, and worked in food factory environments for 20 odd years, and with retailers. And I used to, as part of that, I used to gate crash. Every year, Sainsbury's have a farming conference, and I used to really like the food they did. So I used to gate crash every year to go to the farming conference, and actually would sit for hours in awe of the stories that farmers were telling and suppliers were telling. And I thought, I had a bit of a light bulb moment and thought, I need to have a farm. So I backtracked from there because I decided that probably I didn't work hard enough to be a farmer. So I went to do my masters. I had a complete career change, went to do my masters at Harper. Yeah, partway through that, saw the job description for LEAF, literally like 3 years ago now, probably, and thought, well, they're never going to take me on, but if I don't try. So I applied, and just was so privileged to be given the opportunity to come and work in just the cutting edge of food, the food industry, really, where it all happens at Ground Central. And yeah, just really love it. My proudest moment, I guess, similar to Jenny, was getting the job, probably, but actually also, Caroline stole my thunder a little to say that, you know, a lot of my job is celebrating our members. We would not be what we are without our members. So, you know, this time last year, we were all facing such a different world and had no idea how we were going to go forward. And that is how the surgery came about. So one of my, you know, not proud moments, not my baby, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed being part of and helping with, it has been the LEAF surgery, and just that new way to connect to our members. And that's not going to stop now. We've learned a great way to do that, and it's just been the best year. Every couple of weeks on a Friday morning, you know, nice gentle work, lead into the weekend. Yeah, just hearings from amazing speakers from throughout the industry. So yeah, that's been a brilliant thing to be involved in.
I absolutely agree, and I don't think we be here today with, you know, such a great audience if it hadn't been for the success of those surgeries. So it's really credit to you and the work that you've done in that area. So, and I love also that food was your gateway. I think it's interesting how often in conversations about farming and even in terms of the sustainability, but food as in, you know, a pleasurable thing to eat and something that we all, you know, take joy in 3 times a day is sometimes forgotten. So I love that that was your gateway into food and farming. I suppose the next aspect then is thinking about overcoming challenges. And I'd be really interested to hear what, you know, recognizing that everything isn't always easy, and a lot of the terms that, you know, in a journey, any journey, there's challenges and there's hurdles to overcome. So what would be, you know, the hardest experiences that you've had and how that's been overcome? Caroline, if you could start, please.
Well, I mean, I am eternally optimistic, and so golly, over the years, yes, there have been a lot of challenges. They've come in different forms. They've come in resistance in terms of individual farmers, individual sectors of the industry. They've come in the form of financial. You know, I can remember going through, particularly in the early days of LEAF, you know, our funding, touch wood, is more secure. We've got a more even balance of sort of membership and research and sponsorship and trust funds. But, you know, every Christmas thinking, oh my goodness, are we going to be able to keep LEAF alive? And many will know and have heard the sort of the stories of me sleeping on the floor in the LEAF office, literally because we just didn't have the money. And so there have been challenges, and I guess each one of those, though, if you don't know what the challenges are, you can't actually, you know, address it. And so from that point of view, I found a little Winnie the Pooh saying the other day, which is, as soon as I saw you, and that for me is LEAF, I knew an adventure was going to happen. And I think all of those challenges within LEAF actually make us the stronger for it. It's made us recognize as an organization what hunger looks like in terms of being efficient as an organization. It's made us recognize the focus on doing things right. And, you know, and you know, I love the LEAF Marque team. Well, I love everybody at LEAF. But, you know, that element of respecting and understanding other people's views, addressing those and using other people's skills. And I think, you know, that's those challenges that we've faced in the past have made us sort of have helped serve the foundation for growing us as an organization, respecting the skills and capability of others, respecting the fact that don't ever take anything for granted, and really driving the opportunity of change. And we're very focused. We've always been focused. Our drive is to deliver sustainability. And it's interesting, you know, to watch others sort of dip and dive as to following the money or something like that. But actually, you have to be true to the values. And I guess that's what's served us well as an organization. Well, I'd like to think has served us well.
No, I think you've raised really interesting points there. And it's almost like challenges are a grounding that, you know, it protects the integrity and has made LEAF as resilient and as strong as it has. And I suppose it's framing those as lessons. So a challenge is a lesson if you make it, you know, if you make the best of it. And I think we've definitely, sounds, you know, from the testimony to the LEAF that is still now and delivering the such wide impact it has, that we've learned from those lessons, and that's built the foundations of LEAF to be strong and in, you know, good integrity.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, obviously, yes, and it's kind of trying to talk those through and talk those out, and sometimes, yes, for poor Phil, my husband, you know, the punch ball of the frustration about some things, but actually, it's being reasoned, and you know, and I think for us, we have got such strong grounding, and we work with such brilliant farmers that that's what inspires us to make sure we keep on doing the right things that adds value not only to farmers but through the food chain and ultimately to consumers as well.
Thank you, that's really interesting. Danny, if we could hear about your perspective on this.
So I guess career-wise challenges, I mean, it's been the last year has been the most challenging. I say that with, you know, a huge pinch of salt, and I know we're really privileged at LEAF and people have definitely had it harder, but like, you know, this time last year, everything about how LEAF Marque operated had to change, not just like how we work, but also how we were delivering inspections could not continue in the way we were doing it. And sort of in quite a short amount of time, we had to just, you know, develop a new way of operating. I mean, the 2020 was not all bad. That said, I was really lucky to go on the World Company of Farmers Challenge of Rural Leadership course, which I would hugely recommend for anyone. And it taught me loads of different stuff, but mainly a 3-line from it that we all took was, you know, how important people are in successful leadership or just successful anything. And I think that's the way that I've tried to approach this last year, both how like we worked, and the other people on this call will know how much I've now just phone you up all the time for help, and my millennial instincts to just text and actually pick up the phone and talk to people so that you understand what's going on with everyone individually, but also then how we designed what we were going to do in terms of continuing LEAF Marque in this new remote world, you know, looking at where did people just need space, you know, where were we extended certificates, where were people at their strongest, and you know, where could we make, you know, pull on the strength of the auditors or the farmers themselves, or, you know, and what did we need out of it. And I think that's how we've managed to design something that's actually then what we thought was going to be very temporary has now run for a full year, and going forward. And I think that's, you know, how we've got through this year altogether. And, you know, Caroline and Claire both alluded to it, like the strength of the LEAF Marque team, but also the support of our members, of our stakeholders, of our committee board, whoever, has, yeah, kept us going. So yeah, this has been a challenging year, but I'm really pleased with where we are. And actually, like Claire said, I think we've taken some huge learnings of things we'll take going forward as well.
Yeah, a reoccurring theme of people, and I suppose more than just as a support network, but as an integral part of everything that we do, and taking that perspective is hugely valuable.
Surround yourself with good people in everything you do, I guess. But yeah, that's just good life advice. But I've definitely found that for work and for LEAF Marque, and we do it. And like this week is about thanking those around us as well.
Thank you. Claire, I'd be really interested, because I know this year's been incredibly hard for you, as you know, as one of those many people that were parenting and, you know, juggling all of those balances. Is that your same as Jenny? Has that been your hardest moment, or is there other history that, you know, surpasses that?
I certainly have a new benchmark for what challenge looks like, for sure. Yeah, it's been a really hard working full time, homeschooling a 9-year-old. But yeah, yeah, all it brings to light again, it's about people, and reaching out and getting that help that you need is absolutely critical, and not trying to do everything on your own. Speaking of which, I think, you know, one of the real challenges for me is that, you know, I'm privileged to get to speak to a lot of farmers, and we sometimes get calls from farmers who are struggling and, you know, and have challenges. So, you know, that can be quite difficult, but I'm always here to talk. If farmers or anybody else needs to talk, I'm always here to listen. It's been a challenging year because I'm a people person, and I've missed being in the office, quite honestly. I've missed chats in the kitchen. I've missed chats everywhere, quite frankly. So yeah, that's been quite challenging too. I think a lot of my job is trying to keep a great range of stakeholders feeling included and valued, and adding value for them, and that is always a challenge. Every stakeholder has, you know, different needs and recognises value in different ways. So that can be a bit of a challenge as well. But look, in all of these things, that, you know, it's been great just to be working within the LEAF team, because we have supported each other. You know, when I say the LEAF team, I mean our members as well. I mean our demonstration farmers and our innovation centres and our complete outreach, really, that, you know, it's been possible. The last year has been possible because, you know, we've really all been there for each other. And I hope things will change. And I'm really looking forward to getting back on farms again and getting some fresh air, and getting muddy and wearing ridiculous city girl clothing on farms that I get mocked for my yellow raincoat all the time. I'm looking forward to that again. I can't wait to get back on farms.
I've yeah, just to share that, I've learnt my lesson to never wear pink flowery wellies onto a
Right.
farm. If you're, you know, if you don't want to get ridiculed, just don't do it. I've learned that lesson too.
There's a photo of me, I think, on one of our farmer days where, you know, there's just a collection of green and brown and then a very bright yellow coat right in the middle of the group.
that Jordan one?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, there's another one there as well. The launch up in Scotland when you were new at LEAF as well, and it was pouring with rain. Not only were you wearing bright yellow, but also you were so
wet through. I'm glad you've all got so many stories about how I failed on farms. Great.
Just I thought it was a really interesting point you made earlier about, because we've talked about challenges in the support network of people, but actually to recognise that as an individual person, respecting the challenges that I'm facing, and then also recognising that in others is just as equally important. So I suppose, aside to that, thinking about challenges and overcoming them, I wondered if there's been anything in either your time at LEAF or longer that's perhaps changed your perspective on things. So one thing that I find a lot with sustainability is that it's just so complex. I can, think I've got an informed decision and then I'll learn something else and I'm like, okay, I had that completely wrong. I need to rethink everything about this principle. And I know especially about the livestock sector, when I came to work at LEAF and speaking to you, Jenny, I'd be like, okay, I thought this was good, but actually now I know the alternative. I think differently on that. So I'd be really interested if you could share if that's happened for you, if there's been any things that have made you think differently about things or change your perspective on sustainability, or even changing your perspective on what's important. I suppose actually if we could start with you on Jenny, that one, seeing as you've been the cause for many of my realizations that it's not quite as simple as it seems.
Oh, I've just learned how little I know, and how much more there is to learn. I think, there must be some saying about the more you learn, the more you realise that you've got loads more to learn. But actually, I would put that back to you, Lucy, that you sum up what we do and what we know is we're experts in integrated farm management, the framework, but we're not experts in the individual detail. And that really helped me be okay, I don't need to be an absolute expert in every single tiny element. And it would be impossible to do that. And it's okay to kind of put boundaries on what we know here in the LEAF team. And similarly, also be able to put boundaries on what LEAF Marque in itself can achieve, because it's an assurance system. It's got its limitations. That's okay. But that's why we have the LEAF wider that we pull on, and that's why we have all our many stakeholders, committees, etc., that we go to for that extra insight. And some of the farmers when I used to go visiting farmers, the ones that are the ones I go around the farm and I'm like, oh yeah, they've absolutely nailed LEAF Marque, ticked everything, they're well above and beyond it, are often the ones that think they've still got loads to improve on. And that's, I think, a really interesting element, isn't it? That they're the ones that think, oh no, I'm not good enough, I need to do further. So I guess, it's okay to accept your limitations, but also that, I guess, hunger to always want to learn more is actually, I think, probably what sustainability is always wanting to improve. And so that's what we try and embed in our businesses, and hopefully what we have in the LEAF team as well. I think we're quite ambitious people, and we're never satisfied. We always want a bit more, whether it's a bit more knowledge or move our targets up. So yeah, I don't know whether that's an answer to your question, but I just think I've learned how little I know. But I think that's okay.
No, it's absolutely an answer, because it's not about the topic itself, it's how you frame it. It's the wider context that then influences how important something is, or how you think about it. So I think it was a brilliant answer. Caroline, I suppose this will be interesting because the industry has changed so much, even at the time that you've been working at LEAF. Were there any kind of pinnacle moments where your perspective changed, or where you were made to rethink about something that you thought you understood, or has changed in terms of what's important?
So I guess, like Jenny, I mean, every day is a school day, and just as you think you've got there, you haven't, and that's something that is critical. And it's quite interesting. We have over the many years been asked, oh well, what does sustainability look like? And it isn't a silver bullet and this is it. That site specific piece is really critical. But I guess some of the resetting of challenges and problems have really kind of come to the fore, and you kind of see that almost every 10 years. So things like energy and the whole carbon footprinting, you know, that's really changed big time in terms of how farmers used to just measure oil, diesel and electricity. And now, you know, all the renewables, the technology, the drive, the attention to detail, the more and more knowledge around soil. You know, we just kind of used to do chemical and physical, but now the biology. And I guess they should all be logical. And, you know, I used to lecture at Shuttleworth College in soils and crops and cultivations and things, but actually it's framed differently. And so we keep seeing new framing of things. And, you know, several of you will know one of my favorite topics is biomimicry, and what we can learn from nature to understand, you know, the wicked problems that we really face. And when you look at pest diseases, you know, we've seen COVID-19, there are 850,000 viruses that we could catch off mammals and birds. So our capability to work more effectively with nature is something that I just think we haven't even begun to work out how to do it better. You know, it never ceases to amaze me. And I was really lucky to do my Nuffield in what can farmers learn from science to improve the nutrition of our foods. You know, the fact that we're only 10% human because our DNA in our stomachs sort of represents 90% of all those little bugs and beasties in there. And I just think, gosh, when you just even think of just our own bodies, all the activities that's going on, the movement of nutrients, the capability of salts to move through cells, the fact that our heart beats along and all the things of our organs, all of that is nature. And then out there are millions of insects, bacteria, viruses that make the world work. And we don't work enough with that. And so I guess, you know, the challenge of sustainability is to keep on challenging. And yeah, every day's a school day. Gosh, I learned something new, and I love it. As Claire and Jenny have said, you know, going out on farm, when you sort of see the ideas of farmers, and then you see that spurs another idea for, oh, well, I wonder if I could do that at home, sort of thing. So I think, yeah, there's so much change, but it's the framing of it and not letting it all run away, because at the end of the day, action has to happen. And you can get sort of driven by thinking, oh, I'll just do that. But actually, you know, it's that focus and that framing under integrated farm management sort of remains true in all of those wonderful places.
It's so interesting because a few of the things you've raised there, it's both technology, it's innovation, and then it's just, you know, the natural world and our understanding of that. And then the interaction between all of those things is what the focus is, that's important, and how that's actually, yeah, realized in real life and then taken up on farming practice. That journey is quite difficult and different then too. Okay, thank you. Claire, if we could move on to you and, you know, what's changed for you and your perspectives on this.
Yeah, I mean, we were just having a giggle before we came on, actually, because I was telling Caroline and Jenny that I had massive imposter syndrome sitting on this panel because, you know, when I came into LEAF, I had to learn everything. Everything about my perspective changed. I had to learn a new language of agriculture. Actually, not just agriculture, I had to learn the new language of LEAF and all the blooming acronyms. I really sympathise with all the farmers and all the stakeholders that we work with, because oh my gosh, we use more acronyms than we use words. Anyway, so yeah, I think you know, in terms of changing of perspective, I think I came into this from a food point of view, as you've quite rightly pointed out, Lucy. So I don't know how much my perspective has changed, but if I could answer a slightly different way, I think I added a different perspective at LEAF, in that I was coming from the food industry and the supply chain, and I knew about how products were developed and I knew how retail worked. So I had to learn a completely new, you know, a new sector, but at the same time, I hope that I managed to bring some insight that wasn't necessarily already at LEAF. So yeah, I hope it's not quite answered your question. I've changed it around a bit, but I think it's important to understand that, you know, we're all a different cog, and each and every, you know, stakeholder that we have a touch point with. It is another cog, and it's learning each other's, you know, place and learning each other's language. And yeah, so yeah, it's been exciting to come into LEAF and share some of that yeah, insight and knowledge. And
I would completely agree with the acronyms, but also that you provided insight from other industries, but that insight into the acronyms of other industries. I know with a lot of the food service acronyms and terms, I was very clueless, and if I've got any questions, I know who to ask. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I did bring one or two of my own. Yeah, in fact, I taught Caroline one the other day. That's probably what's my biggest achievement. I taught Caroline an acronym.
What was that? Can you remember?
Oh, SME, a different, yeah, SME, subject matter experts.
New one for me too. Okay, great. We've had a couple of questions from the audience. So if you could just, while we're still thinking back and reflecting, a question for you, Caroline. Thinking back on, you know, your journey and with LEAF in particular, what are the 1 or 2 messages you would really want the audience to absorb and pass on?
Golly, that's a good question, because when I guess from a LEAF perspective, it is making sure that we're facing huge challenges with climate change, with all the market disruption, political disruption on a global scale. And there is, within this disruption, a huge risk of duplication of activities and efforts. And I think we really need to all work together and work out what that new trust model is with government and private and public partnership types of approaches. And so I guess, you know, for us, it's that message of let's build on what's already there that works. And, you know, the rigor of LEAF Marque, the capability of our demonstration farmers. Okay, I'm slightly biased, but I think, you know, that is something we mustn't lose sight of as an industry. That communication outreach we have through LEAF Education and through things like Open Farm Sunday and Online Farm Sunday, you know, let's sort of come together and work out, you know, what we can all bring to drive change within the industry. We've got 10 years to deliver against the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. So that's not very long. In fact, it's 9 years. You know, from that point of view, let's really work together and work out how we can all bring and add and drive change, because it's not going to be easy for the next 5 years or so for the farming industry, certainly across the UK. And that's, you know, it's the same right across the world. So I think getting the right collaborative model is going to be absolutely key. So yes, and I would hope we get more people supporting LEAF, more farmers who've been thinking, yeah, I might just do it. And, you know, that's where our members are really important in encouraging other farmers and their own customers and members as well.
Yeah, it's collective impact, isn't it? We can't do it in isolation, especially when the targets are so near and so, you know, at the moment far reaching. Yeah, collective impact. There's a question for you, Jenny. So having seen inside of LEAF for 5 years, what would be the main things that you would want your own generation to do for the farmed environment?
Oh, I don't know. I guess just question things. I don't know. I have to get careful. When I used to be invited out for dinner with friends, I felt like I was maybe pushing my luck sometimes, because we can definitely, my generation had that preconceived idea of what like healthy food looks like or what environmental food looks like, and I'll be there on my soapbox like, no, you're wrong. And it's not really for me to tell anyone what's wrong or right or what food to choose, but I think maybe just question what you're being told. There's a lot of false advertising out there, or like easy claims that are made that aren't built on anything, and actually just challenging people to challenge their own ideas, and if they can come out onto farm and see what it looks like, or, you know, just don't take things at face value, I think would help to just make a lot of different choices. Because, you know, we're not quite the Greta Thunberg generation, but we are, you know, shopping for ourselves now. We're not having to influence anyone else and potentially making other decisions, and who knows what the impact of this is going to be in terms of an awful recession, and I don't know how much people will have, you know, what their income can be spent on, whether it can be invested in things like houses and cars and things like that, but actually can it be in terms of, you know, those food choices that we make probably 3 times a day if we're lucky, and think about, you know, where we're putting what we're putting in our bodies.
And I completely empathise with that, not wanting that fine balance between not wanting to facilitate a conversation that perhaps, you know, I feel is, you know, slightly in the wrong direction or is misinformed, while still balance that with being a nice person and not telling people what to do, and, you know, being respectful of individual choices and things like that. And I suppose almost that information is a symptom of social media and a symptom of, you know, the kind of industry that we have, and respect those. And it's definitely a challenge that I would think all generations are facing in different ways as well. A question for you, Claire. So having worked on the food production side, what would you like to say to yourself if you were still in food retail? Oh, you're on mute. Oh. You're muted, Claire.
Sorry, I had to mute myself to shut the rest of the household up. What would I tell myself? Yeah, I would really reflect on the similarities of the industries, actually, and I'd want to celebrate those. Yeah, I think I would encourage a greater pride in using British sourced products and innovation and all of those things, because at the end of the day, the UK food industry is at the cutting edge of you know, product development, etc. And I think I would go back and say be more daring, be more ambitious, but actually, yeah, and I think that's what I really loved about, and this is an odd reflection, I think that's what I really was drawn to the agriculture, really, because I could see that innovation. Now on reflection, I look back and it was where I was too. I think, you know, you don't always see what's right next to you, but, you know, I would say for my previous 20 years, my former self and myself now, I would say it is about looking at opportunities, looking at having ambition, being fierce, going out there, and not being afraid to face the challenges. There are challenges. Caroline's absolutely right. There are challenges, but there are answers, and there are opportunities, and there are relationships, and there are collaborations, and there are all those amazing things that are going to answer all of these questions. They're there. We just need to pull them all together. So yeah, I think I would look back and say, you know, be more ambitious.
There's a lovely answer to finish up this section of reflection and thinking about where you've got to now, and I think definitely shared insights there. If we could now maybe think about the current, what you're doing now. So I'd be really interested to hear what your current priorities are, and maybe even if there's any particular challenges that you're facing at the moment that you're trying to work through. Caroline, if we could start with you, please.
So I guess the current kind of almost goes into the future. We've set our 10-year strategy, which will take us to 2031. We decided very strongly that a 5-year strategy, you know, there is too much disruption for the here and now. But by 2031, we would have delivered against the SDGs. And so from our perspective, it's how do we help support farmers and the industry really drive forward in that direction? And I think, you know, it's one of the things that I'm always reminded about for LEAF. We're not just about farmers. We're there, you know, we're about sustainability, and that is farmers. It's the part that the industry supporting farmers plays. It's the retailers, it's the food, it's the consumers. And so I guess our pathways as an organisation is something that we need to really clearly define. So we have set, right, this is what it's going to be like in 2031, framed around the great sort of work streams that we have of our demonstration farms, our innovation centres, and the technical activity that we have, the market opportunity through LEAF Marque, and of course the LEAF education and engagement piece. And then sort of really trying to knit the 3 themes that we're now talking about as an organisation. So health, you know, and everybody, healthy soils, healthy biodiversity, but really importantly too, healthy people. And, you know, this last year has just put such a focus on people's personal health and physical and mental health. And the farming industry is not yet in the right place for actually embedding health and nutrition as a core value to people's health. The food we produce should be just, you know, the answer. And, you know, let food be thy medicine is a very famous saying, of course. And we don't do that. And the more that we as an industry take ownership of that, the more that governments work across the sort of education departments, the health department and DEFRA, with those cross-cutting solutions, we can drive some really fast solutions. So for us, and I think, you know, the drive of getting these things aligned, getting our farmers and our members geared up to delivering in that direction, and embracing health, diversity, and that biodiversity, diversity of crops, because, you know, we're still 60% of our crops across the world are just 3, and there are 300,000 edible crops. So, you know, a little bit more diversity in our cropping systems, and embracing the diversity of the cultures that we have across the world in terms of food and nutrition. And then finally, of course, enrichment. And that has to be, you know, enriching the lives of farmers, but of course of people. And, you know, it gives me just so much joy to think those people who went out on Open Farm Sunday, you know, some 16 years ago, are now at university, and they have had farming touch them, and they will be a little bit more interested. You know, I think actually all 4 of us are not originally from farming, but each one of us has been touched by agriculture and farming in a different way. And that's sort of risen the passion and the commitment that we all have to the farming sector, and the pride that, you know, the pride that we have about the farmers as well.
So you mentioned there the strategy, and if anyone hasn't seen that, do take a look at the LEAF website, and you can find links to it's a PDF of that to have a look. And the 3 terms you've mentioned there of health, diversity, and enrichment, is the reason that you chose those terms because of that very issue that they're cross-sector? I'm just asking that because I think talking around the topics of sustainability, there's so many terms used. There's net zero, there's regenerative, there's, you know, clean, green. What was it, that cross-sector element of those 3 words that made those important, or was there something else?
Yes, and you know, we went through a really big consultation process in the development of our strategy, but they are cross-cutting themes, and there are themes that people can relate to as well. Yes, as you say, as Clare has said as well, you know, whoa, there is a language. And sometimes we use that language to protect ourselves and sound important, because I can, you know, spew off lots of really complicated words that nobody understands. But I think, you know, the reality is that we need things that are capable for people to relate to. And, you know, when I write an article occasionally, I let my husband read it, and Phil reads it, and he says, what are you saying? And I'll tell him what I'm saying. He says, why haven't you written it? And I think, you know, it's so important. If we want people to engage with things and connect with things, they've got to understand it. And, you know, I always kind of feel that, well, if I can understand it, then that should be okay, because everybody else would be able to understand it. And so I think, yeah, we need to test and try different ways, but there are areas that people can certainly relate to.
Thank you. And the language is just so important, isn't it? Especially in terms of that section, and why create new words for something that's already been perfectly explained by or existing words. Jenny, if we could hear about your current priorities or challenges and perspective on that.
Yeah, so yeah, because we've launched a 10-year strategy at the moment, looking at, you know, what specifically that means for the LEAF Marque team, and what next steps we should be taking to get to our big 10-year ambitious goals. Part of that will be obviously us launching our global impact report tomorrow, in terms of where we've moved forward in indicators, but also you know, where we could be looking at stages beyond LEAF Marque or relationship building. And we've got an evaluation running at the moment as well, looking at how LEAF Marque influences sort of LEAF and LEAF's enabling environment as well. So yeah, being that Clare and I, and maybe I'm stealing her thunder what she's going to cover, but are looking at where we can develop more market opportunities, particularly around in, you know, dairy and arable sectors, and where ideally we could build on our own recognitionship relationships with other governments. We love how we have that with the Environment Agency and how we work with Jersey, and we think that's really important that we can really support policy and that industry and policy are pulling in the same direction. And it'd probably be remiss of me not to mention that, like, within the team and maybe your work, Lucy, and Jess, I stand on their shoulders hugely, and they're really looking at how we can embed remote auditing into something going forward more permanently, and we're actively revising the LEAF Marque standard at the moment, so we want to make sure that's always at the cutting edge, and that actually probably highlights one of our challenges at the moment. We're looking at particularly in the sort of rented land space, because I think this is somewhere which potentially is one of these things where we have to put a boundary on what LEAF Marque can achieve, but who's looking after the long-term sustainability of the environmental features on farm? And that's something that I'm a bit aware of and maybe a bit concerned about, that LEAF Marque, yes, we work with the individual business and they might have that land for a set amount of time and they will absolutely manage it to the best of their ability, but when they don't have that land anymore, then what happens? And we need to be looking after our landscapes at the landscape scale, and at across a really long time scale. And I think that's somewhere where we're looking where we could do that better at LEAF Marque, but also where can we do that sort of at wider LEAF too.
A lot of big questions. And when talking about strategy and the development and moving forward of LEAF Marque, what are you moving towards? So what's your idea of success for LEAF Marque, and where is that direction heading, and what does that look like from your perspective?
I guess I could list a bunch of indicators that are in the strategy, which I'm sure you can read, in terms of we want to increase our hectareage and we want to increase our diversity. But theoretically, for me, a lot of what's been said this week already and what our farmers say is how much they have seen us as the right thing to do, and businesses have spoken this week. I think it was James Bailey on Tuesday said that LEAF is really inspirational, and where Caroline pitched us 30 years ago was like incredibly inspirational for what now is just totally what everyone should have been doing. And if, like Caroline said, we've got a horrendously rocky 5 to 10 years coming down the line, and if we can keep LEAF Marque as that right thing to do, that inspirational thing, that assurance scheme that's kind of seen slightly differently than other assurance schemes, seen as at the top, then I think I've done my job, if you like. Then I think that's still success for us. It maybe sounds like we're standing still, but it's not that, because we've got so much complexity to come and we need to keep driving ahead. We need to keep leading the leaders. Yes, keep everyone we've already got, join more people in along the way, but we have to move forwards. And if we can continue to be seen, we can look back in 20 years time and think, oh yeah, LEAF Marque was where everyone else should have been back then I think we've made a success of it.
I love that idea of movement forward as the success, because when they're not dependent on an indicator that doesn't capture the full complexity and the full impact of what we do. It's just about progress and taking everyone along with us for that. I think that's a really nice way to frame it.
Yeah, I guess it might be harder for me to report to the board of did I achieve my indicators? It feels more like it's more of a mindset, it's more of a feeling, it's more of a an opinion of LEAF Marque and our reputation that I think in some sense is more important than did we get X number of farms.
Thank you. Claire, if you could tell us about your current priorities and looking forward, what the challenges are.
Yeah, I mean, look, farmers engaging with LEAF and becoming LEAF Marque certified is really only half the story, isn't it? And actually we have to remember that LEAF Marque logo and recognition for farmers goes beyond that audit. So a lot of what I've been looking at has been those how we create market opportunities and how we get the value for LEAF Marque, etc. And look, I'm going to shine the light back on you, Lucy. The work that you have done over the last 12 years, 12 years? 12
You're very busy.
on getting a new claims and labelling system up and running so that we can tell these stories more effectively, not only more effectively, but more robustly, with that kind of due diligence in place, which all of that's all boring, but it's so critical. And what you've done there, Lucy, has been absolutely brilliant. And to kind of bolster that in a way, and as a continuation of that story, and being able to tell stories about Leafmarque in the public domain, and within the supply chain. Shameless plug here, but today, in fact, is the launch of our new Leafmark Tracker. So organisations within the supply chain who source Leafmark certified produce from growers have a new facility that they can use from today onwards, where it just makes it so much easier to identify your Leafmark certified farms, get live information about their status, their Leafmark status, etc. And it's something that's been really missing. And, you know, we've been challenged quite a lot at Leaf that, you know, if supply chains are going to, you know, support Leafmarque, how are we going to make that easier? So, yeah, we've had to take that on board and reflect. So, yeah, a lot of what we're looking at the moment is how Leafmarque works, you know, how it keeps on working beyond, you know, the farmers doing their bit, quite honestly. So yeah, would really encourage those that work within the supply chain to get in touch if they're interested in hearing more about the Leafmarque Tracker. And yes, also go and have a look at claims and labelling, make sure you're doing what you need to be doing there. And we will continue collectively to spread the word about Leafmarque. And actually, I was really encouraged by a paper that came out earlier this year that was, you know, that stated that there's actually just under 50% recognition of the Leafmarque logo, which is absolutely incredible, considering that, you know, it isn't across every retailer, it isn't across every brand, but actually it's resonating with people. So yeah, that was just great news to read. So yeah, that's a lot of, so that is honestly a fraction of what I'm working on at the moment, but along with a few other things. But yeah, that's I'm really proud with the Leafmarque Tracker and claims and labelling and where we've got that to be. And huge round of applause to you, Lucy, for all your hard work in those areas as well. You keep us doing the right thing, Lucy.
Thank you for the plug of claims and labelling. And I think, but your point on recognition is so important, because it's not just about industry opportunities that gives, but also the piece of just sharing the positive story about our farmers and all the work they do, and they can do that through the logo.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
really good point to make. We're
Lucy,
coming up to the
add to that. I mean, I think it was something that James Bailey said earlier as well, you know, that importance of transparency, traceability and honesty. And, you know, that's going to be critical in trade. It's critical, as Claire's highlighted, in the retail sector as well. So, you know, we should, fantastic. And yeah, hats off, because this is such an opportunity for driving change.
Absolutely. So we're coming up to the last 5 minutes of the session. And I just wanted to focus a bit more on the strategy. And what was really encouraging for me as an employee at Leaf is that all of the commitments are topics that are close to my heart, and I think they resonate with every single employee at Leaf. And I would just be really interested to think, in terms of at an individual level for you, what issues are close to your heart? What would you really aspire? What one thing would you aspire for there to be change, either in the food system, in the industry, or in Leaf? And what would be, you know, your aspirational change? Caroline, could we start with you, please?
So I guess the biggie would be scaling up the level of adoption of sustainability. And, you know, and that's it is a challenge, but that's just here in the UK and on a global scale. So that's my real biggie, would be the scaling up. And I think what we've done in setting out our strategy has been developing 8 commitments that actually will help that pathway. So, I mean, ultimately, we want to see sustainability, and we want consumers to understand and farmers to be able to be supported in delivering it and demonstrating that they're delivering it.
We have a pathway to scaling up, I think, just frame it like that. And yeah, we've got all of the ingredients there. It's just getting the engagement and commitments achieved. Jenny, what would be your aspirational changes?
I'm going to go off the company line a bit, I guess. For me, it's diversity in the industry. Like, we've talked about the fact that none of us come from a farming background. We're all women, surprise, surprise, if you haven't noticed yet at the end of this hour. And normally I'm the only woman under 30 on most of the meeting or panels or whatever that I go and sit on, and I just think we need to look at that. And Sarah McAdoo kind of alluded to it yesterday, that we need to make sure we're getting the best of the best in this industry, and the ideas and the innovation that they bring, not necessarily based on preconceived ideas of whether, you know, based on gender or age or, you know, sexual orientation or skin color, anything like that. Like, we need to look at ways to do that. And that's something that, aside from, I guess, in Leaf Marque, if I do look back to Leaf Marque, you know, us being global is really important, that we remain at that level, and we recognise that we're not here to tell any country how to do farming, or, you know, what model works here in the UK. We're not trying to pick that up and make that work elsewhere in the standard. We're trying to reflect everyone's own, you know, individuality and what they can bring to what sustainable farming means. And then, yeah, just on a personal level, like trying to embed that in, you know, what we can look to for the whole industry as well, like not pull up the ladder behind ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that diversity point is so important, and it feels like it's only in the last year really been raised from a variety of different perspectives, and the conversation is just a start, isn't it? It's thinking about how that can translate into actually enabling that. And yeah, I completely agree with that. Claire, your aspirational changes.
So look, I'm a social scientist, and I've come into this kind of natural science space, so it would be remiss of me not to say that building connections would have to be my main priority and my main kind of ambition going forward. I think we're doing a great job at doing that already collectively, but I think we need to be much better at it. As Caroline said, we've got to stop the duplication. We've got to find ways of working together better, smarter, quicker, more agile, all of those, you know, cliches and things that we talk about all the time. But I read about so much. I was saying this in an email the other day. I'm reading about so much amazing stuff, but I'm not seeing it really being connected that well yet. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the future holds in terms of, you know, really big organizations and small organizations, those in the private sector, those in the charitable sector, those in the public sector, all coming together and working together better and building better connections.
Absolutely, it's people again, isn't it? It's people and the work they're doing, and where they are. It's
about relationships, exactly that. Yeah, it's about listening and it's about building relationships.
Thank you. So we haven't had any more questions. If you do have a very quick 1-minute question, you could pop it in the chat box now. I suppose just to finish the session by saying a massive thank you to giving us your time to hear more about you and your perspectives. And I think everyone else will have found that as, you know, inspirational and enjoyable as I have. For everyone else, our final session as part of Zoom into Leaf Marque Week is tomorrow. Well, we'll be launching the next Global Impact Report. We'll have new stats, we'll have all of the new impact work. Really excited to hear about that. So if you are interested, please do sign up, and information can be found on the website, or it's the same links that you've been using today. So I would really encourage you to come to that if you are available. And yeah, that just leaves me to say thank you to all of you for attending and for your time and listening. And thank you, Caroline, Jenny and Claire.